My wife left a note saying, "I'll be back in a few years." 6 years later, she returned expecting reconciliation, but I had moved on completely. I still remember the night she left. Vanessa, my wife of 14 years, had always wanted more than our small-town life. One morning, I woke up to a note on the bed. "I'm finding someone who can explore the world with me. I'll be back in a few years. Don't wait up." My heart sank, but every call I made went straight to voicemail. The kids asked if she was dead. I didn't argue. In my mind, she might as well have been. For months, I wrestled with despair, juggling single parenthood and financial chaos. But slowly, I began to breathe again. Without her constant demands for designer handbags or lavish dinners, I could finally focus on what mattered. By the end of the first year, I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce, granted automatically since she was missing. Selling the house, I found a cabin I'd always dreamed of, somewhere rustic but charming, far from the suffocating life we'd shared. The kids adjusted faster than I did, and by the third year, they no longer mentioned her name. For the first time, I felt alive. I cooked my own meals, built a career that mattered, and learned to love myself again. Then, 6 years after she disappeared, a quiet Saturday morning brought a sound I never expected: footsteps on the trail leading to our cabin. My heart stopped when I saw her silhouette, the same confident smile, the same expensive clothes, walking toward me as if nothing had changed. She said it casually, almost rehearsed. "Hello, darling, I'm back as promised. We can pick up where we left off." I looked her over. The same flashy accessories, the same attitude. I had changed. The weight of responsibility, the struggles, and the freedom I'd fought for had reshaped me entirely. I replied coldly, "You think you can disappear for 6 years, leave everything behind, and come back like nothing happened?" She blinked, clearly expecting tears or a hug. But I didn't budge. Vanessa tried humility, claiming she had grown, wanted to rebuild our family, begged forgiveness. I didn't respond. My son Lucas, now 12, stepped out of the cabin and froze. The mix of emotions on his face, confusion, fear, guarded curiosity, reminded me that our life had moved on without her. Vanessa stretched her arms, smiling, as if nothing had changed. I saw clearly she hadn't anticipated this. She began to plead. "I've changed. I see now what I left behind. Let's be a family again." Her words echoed the old promises, but the reality was different. I had discovered the joy of independence, the thrill of financial control, the quiet satisfaction of not living in constant tension. I noticed the letters, the receipts, the little reminders of who I had been before she left. They were now relics of a life I no longer belonged to. My home, my cabin, my rules. She assumed our children would run to her, but they had moved on too. They were polite, wary, and guarded, a mirror of my own feelings. Then Lucas, stepping forward, broke the quiet. "Mom, why did you leave?" The question hung in the air. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no answer came. 6 years of absence couldn't be explained in a single breath. Vanessa's expression changed: shock, realization, frustration. The plan she had imagined, the triumphant return, crumbled with every passing second. My calm, measured presence was a wall she hadn't anticipated. I felt a strange satisfaction. Not cruelty, but justice. I had survived. I had flourished. She hadn't. And here she was, expecting forgiveness without accountability. The kids, my cabin, my life, all untouched by her absence in terms of growth. She had returned to a world that no longer included her control. I watched her try to regain composure, but the confidence that once intimidated me was gone. The woman who had vanished 6 years ago now hesitated, unsure how to navigate a life that had moved on without her. She tried one last time. "I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this." I walked slowly, deliberately, showing no haste, no desperation. Every step echoed the distance between the life we had and the life I had built alone. Her eyes followed me, wide and anxious, as if I might crumble at any moment. But I didn't. I had learned patience, resilience, and the quiet power of independence. The woman who once commanded my attention now waited for crumbs. I turned to my kids and smiled. Their laughter, their questions, their ease, that was my victory. Not revenge, but life lived fully. Vanessa hadn't expected to see this version of me, this family that thrived without her. Then Lucas spoke again, softly, almost to himself. Why didn't you come back sooner? His innocence, mixed with curiosity, cut through the tension. She opened her mouth, but the words faltered. 6 years of absence left a silence too heavy for simple explanations. Vanessa's face tightened, a mix of disbelief and frustration. The life she assumed she could reclaim was gone. I had rebuilt everything she once controlled, the home, the finances, the peace that came from independence. She tried to speak, to insert herself back into our rhythm, but I didn't let her. Every attempt sounded hollow, rehearsed. She hadn't expected that leaving us would teach me how to thrive on my own. The kids watched silently, their trust in me unwavering. I had become their anchor, their protector, and now the one she had abandoned. Her confidence faltered as she realized 6 years away had not diminished our family, it had strengthened it. Then Lucas, with a tentative glance at me, whispered, "Dad, are we really okay without her?" His words hung in the air, a reminder that life had moved on, and there was no place left for her control. Vanessa tried again, softer this time. "I made mistakes, but I can change. We could be a family again." Her words sounded rehearsed, fragile, like she had rehearsed them in front of a mirror for years. I didn't respond. I walked through the cabin slowly, letting the silence stretch between us. Every step reinforced the distance she had created by leaving. She hadn't anticipated the strength I gained her absence. The kids moved freely, laughing, living unafraid. I felt a surge of quiet pride. This was life she couldn't take from us. Vanessa looked around, realizing the cabin, the laughter, the stability, everything she had abandoned, now existed without her. Then she reached for Lucas instinctively. His gaze met mine, hesitant, questioning. He had moved on, but the question in his eyes reminded her 6 years of absence weren't so easily erased. Vanessa's confidence had all but vanished. The audacious woman who once dictated our lives now seemed small, unsure of how to navigate a world she no longer controlled. She tried again, reaching for words that might weave us back together, but they fell flat against the walls I had built. I glanced at the kids. Their laughter, their casual jokes, their easy camaraderie with me, this was my victory. Not vengeance, not cruelty, but the quiet, undeniable proof that life had continued, grown, and even thrived without her. Lucas peeked around the corner, curiosity mixed with caution in his eyes. The question he didn't voice hung in the air. Would this stranger, the mother who abandoned us, ever belong here again? I finally addressed Vanessa directly. "Do you see now?" I asked calmly. 6 years. I raised our kids alone. I worked every day to rebuild our life, and I am happier than I ever was with you. Her lips parted, but no words came. She was unprepared to confront this version of me, the man shaped by absence, struggle, and resilience. I walked over to the kitchen counter, where receipts and letters from those 6 years lay neatly stacked. Each piece was a testament to the life she had chosen to ignore. Each one a reminder that time had a way of changing people, and that sometimes absence isn't just a void, it's a teacher. She shifted her weight, her eyes flicking nervously around the cabin, taking in the new furniture, the freshly painted walls, the small improvements that I had made one by one. She had thought she could return, and everything would be as she left it, as if time paused for her adventures. But this world wasn't frozen anymore. It had moved, expanded, grown without her. "I came back, and here I am," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "I thought we could," I interrupted. "You thought?" "That's the difference," I said, my tone measured, unwavering. "Life moved on. I moved on. And we didn't wait for you to return." Her expression shifted from shock to anger. Her carefully constructed persona of certainty had cracked. I realized then she had expected triumph, a warm welcome, tears of joy. What she hadn't prepared for was this: silence, calm, and the undeniable truth of our lives having thrived without her presence. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but she didn't advance. She lingered at the edge of the porch, as if daring me to challenge her. I didn't. Instead, I walked to Lucas and knelt, ruffling his hair gently. "Are you okay?" I asked. He nodded, a small smile on his face, and I could see the subtle pride in his gaze, pride that his father had become someone stronger, someone who refused to be undone by abandonment. For a moment, Vanessa looked at us, this small unit of life she once thought she could disrupt. I realized then that no amount of apology, no promises, no rehearsed speeches would undo what had been built in her absence. The home, the family, the stability, all had taken root and flourished without her input. Then she tried another approach. I never stopped thinking about you. About the kids. Her voice trailed off, hesitant, unsure. She wasn't accustomed to this silence, this refusal to react emotionally. The years had given me patience, yes, but also the ability to see through her attempts to manipulate or charm. I stayed silent, letting the weight of my calm speak louder than any argument or accusation ever could. Finally I spoke, quietly but firmly. You left. We survived. We thrived. You can't step back into our lives as if nothing happened. She stared at me, disbelief mixed with anger and a tinge of regret. It was a look I would never forget, the realization that she had returned expecting control and found none. Lucas stepped closer, and I placed a protective hand on his shoulder. His confidence, his ease with life without her, was the clearest message I could give. Absence had taught us resilience, and no single return could erase the growth of 6 years. Vanessa's shoulders slumped slightly, and I knew she finally understood that some doors, once closed, remain closed, not out of spite, but because life simply moved forward. The air was heavy with unspoken words. I could sense her trying to gauge the boundaries, to calculate how much she could reclaim. But the truth was clear. I was no longer the man who waited, who pleaded, who feared loss. I was different now. Stronger, independent, complete. And she had arrived too late to reclaim anything. Vanessa's face was a mixture of disbelief, frustration, and the tiniest hint of regret. She had returned expecting a warm embrace, tears of joy, and the easy surrender of a man who had spent years waiting for her. Instead, she found a man who had rebuilt everything, a father who had raised his children alone, a man who had created a life of independence and joy in her absence. Her eyes wandered through the cabin, noting the changes she hadn't anticipated. The fresh paint, the reorganized furniture, the garden she had once mocked, all carefully tended over the years, reflecting a life she assumed she could step back into. But everything here bore the mark of my effort, my decisions, my control. I could see her trying to measure the distance between the life she had abandoned and the reality of what we had become. Every step she took felt hesitant, calculated. She didn't know how to approach a world that had moved on without her. I let her stand there, letting the silence speak volumes. 6 years had taught me patience and the quiet power of observation. Lucas watched her with a mixture of curiosity and guarded caution. "Mom, why didn't you come back sooner?" His voice was soft but clear, and the question carried weight. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came. 6 years of absence weren't easily explained. No casual apology could cover the loss of time, the stolen moments, or the lessons learned in her absence. I finally addressed her, my voice calm, steady. "Do you see now? 6 years. I raised our kids alone. I built this life, and I am happier than I ever was with you. You left, and we survived, we thrived. That's the difference." Her lips parted, a silent gasp, but she didn't respond. She hadn't prepared for this version of me, this man who had grown, matured, and found strength in absence. She realized that control, once wielded, had been stripped from her hands and now lay firmly in mine. Vanessa's confidence faltered further. She tried another approach: charm, manipulation, rehearsed apologies. "I've changed. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this." But the words sounded empty against a life that had been built without her. She had no leverage here, no authority, no power over the home, the children, or me. I stood tall, measured, unyielding. "You can't step back into our lives as if nothing happened. We are not waiting for you anymore." The air was heavy with truth. My children, my home, my life, all had moved forward, and she could only observe. Then Lucas, emboldened, took a step closer. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder, grounding him, letting him know that our family was intact. Vanessa's eyes flicked between us, realizing that whatever she had hoped to reclaim, the affection, the influence, the control, had been replaced by something stronger: resilience, stability, and independence. Her posture sagged slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of defeat. She had returned expecting triumph, And yet every moment here reminded her of the passage of time, the growth she had missed, and the life she could no longer dominate. I watched her carefully, noting the small signs of frustration, the tightened jaw, the faltering gaze, the slight tremor in her hands. I realized that her return wasn't about reunion or redemption. It was about expectation. And expectation, she now saw, had no place here. Finally, I spoke, quietly but firmly. We are alive. We are thriving. And this life, built with care and patience over 6 years, isn't yours to reclaim. She swallowed, nodding slightly, understanding finally that time had a way of teaching lessons no apology could erase. As the morning sun crept across the porch, the cabin felt alive with a calm authority I had never known before. The children played nearby, oblivious to the storm she had once represented, and I realized the life she thought she could return to was no longer hers. It belonged to us. Vanessa stood at the edge of the porch, her arms folded, her expensive clothes and rehearsed confidence now seeming almost comical in their futility. She had returned expecting reconciliation, triumph, and a life paused for her absence, but she faced a reality she hadn't anticipated. The life we had built without her was complete, resilient, and untouchable. I watched my children playing in the yard, their laughter carrying across the cabin. They were safe, happy, and thriving, proof that absence had not broken us, but had strengthened our bond. Lucas glanced up at me, eyes bright and confident, no trace of fear or longing for the mother who had abandoned him. I felt a quiet pride. This was victory without vengeance, power without cruelty. Vanessa finally spoke, voice trembling slightly. I thought we could start over. I didn't think things would change this much. Her words were thin, rehearsed, weak. She hadn't expected that in her absence we would grow, evolve, and find happiness. She had assumed she could return and reclaim what she left behind. She was wrong. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of 6 years of struggle, growth, and self-discovery settle into my voice. Life moved on, Vanessa. We survived. We thrived. And now, there is nothing left for you to reclaim here. The kids, the home, our lives, they belong to those who stayed, fought, and grew while you were gone. Her face paled slightly, shock and disbelief etched in every line. I could see her calculating her next move, but there was nothing she could do. No charm, no apology, no tears could reverse the years she had chosen to abandon. The cabin, the laughter of our children, the stability and warmth of our lives, these were untouchable, fortified by absence, patience, and hard work. I walked slowly toward the front door, then turned back, my gaze steady and unwavering. We are alive, we are happy, and we are whole. You are a stranger here now. This life is ours, built on love, resilience, and endurance, not on absence or expectation. Vanessa's lips parted again, but no words came. Her carefully constructed facade of control and dominance had shattered against the quiet power of a life rebuilt. I realized then that some lessons could only be taught by absence, by time, and by the unwavering courage to continue despite betrayal. The children ran toward me, Lucas and his siblings smiling, their energy undimmed by the shadow of the past. I embraced them, letting Vanessa see, not with words but with life, that we had not only survived, we had thrived. Finally, she stepped back, eyes wide, as if trying to memorize every detail of a world she had expected to control. I didn't gloat, didn't mock. I simply watched, calm and unshaken, as the reality settled over her. 6 years away had changed everything. And she was too late. As she walked down the trail, shoulders slumped, it became clear. The woman who once claimed our lives as hers had returned to find herself a stranger in the world she abandoned. I turned back to the cabin, inhaled the crisp morning air, and smiled quietly. For the first time in years, life felt complete.